right? Risky move.
Yeah.
I'm like, the heck you are. And he did it. He would walk to my house every night, and he would just walk the neighborhood with me every night. He said, how about the plan of going home and learning to love your wife and have her learn to love you? What I garnered from that was this concept of one-on-one time. He said, just hold on. Just hold on. The light will return. So he turned me into the Nevada State Bar, wrote a letter on me, said, Mr. Williams told me to go F myself. So I get a call from bar council. Is this Butch Williams? Yes, sir. Did you tell that other lawyer to go F himself? Yes, I did. Can you not do that anymore? No, I won't. I've never done it again.
If you're a man that controls his own destiny, a man that is always in the pursuit of being better, you are in the right place. You are responsible. You are strong. You are a leader. You are a force for good. Gentlemen, this is the Alph Quorum.
Our guest today was born in Las Vegas on February 2nd, 1966. He's the youngest of 5 children. His father worked a variety of jobs. When Butch was a kid, his father started the Las Vegas Motocross Club and later the Las Vegas Bicycle Motocross Club. Every Saturday and Sunday, he spent at the motocross and bicycle motocross track with his family, organizing and running events. Butch also raced both BMX and motocross himself. When Butch was about 14 years old, the track was no more feasible to run. His dad started a plumbing company, and Butch began to learn the trade of plumbing. Butch also worked a variety of other jobs in high school, including being a dishwasher at Marie Callender's and driving a delivery truck. When he was 19 years old, he decided to serve an LDS mission. Butch had joined the church approximately 3 years earlier. He served in Alaska and had a wonderful time there. Upon returning home, he attended college at UNLV and then received a Bachelor of Science degree in Construction Management from Brigham Young University in 1991. While at BYU, he met and married the magnificent Paula Jones from Woodburn, Oregon. They have 6 children, 5 of whom are married. They are the grandparents of 10 grandchildren. Butch attended law school at the McGeorge School of Law in Sacramento, California. He graduated in 1994 and returned to Las Vegas with his family. In 1997, he started his own law practice. He mostly represents contractors and subcontractors in construction issues. He also practices in the areas of real estate and business law. Approximately 7 years ago, his son-in-law, Drew Starbuck, graduated law school and came to work with Butch. Mr. Starbuck's practices primarily in real estate planning and probate. They own the firm Williams Starbuck. Butch, I'm so glad to have you here, man. I've had my eye on you since I started this whole thing and thought, that's a dude I want to get in here. So we ran around in some of the same circles here probably 10 or 15 years ago, and I've moved to the other side of town, and maybe you've moved out of that neighborhood, but I've watched you with your family and what you have going on, and I just thought this is exactly the type of man that I want to highlight once we get around to being able to do that. So welcome here, man. I really appreciate you driving all this way. I drove up to my building today and I see this black Corvette and I knew exactly who was here.
It's an old one. It didn't cost very much.
Whatever. It's super sweet. So again, thank you for being here, man. We're just trying to help men level themselves up, whether that be through education or through learning how to be better in their family or through emotional intelligence, recovering from addictions and just being good men. And so anyone who knows you, I'm sure would safely say, that's a good dude to be highlighting as a good man. So thank you again for being here.
I'm glad to be here, and I surely don't deserve any praise, but life has been good to me, challenging but good. And if there's ever time to spend on raising young men to men, it's now, right?
Yes, totally. That's one of the reasons that we feel good about what we're doing. We have a smaller audience, but I think we've had listeners from 39 different countries through this whole thing. And so we're hoping to just continue to grow this, and appreciate you being a part of this here today. So talk more about your family. You've got 10 grandchildren. Are most of your kids here in town? Or they live in other places or?
Yeah. So we've got, my oldest son, Tyson, and his wife live in the San Diego area. They're in Carlsbad, California.
Okay.
They've got 3 little kids, and he runs a shutter business down there and has a couple other things that he's involved in. We're trying to get him back to Las Vegas, but he seems to like that surf too much.
I bet.
So I'm not sure if he's ever coming home.
He won't be back.
Oh, my daughter, Kayla Starbuck. She's married to Drew Starbuck.
Okay.
And she's wonderful. As a matter of fact, when she met Drew, when they were in college, he wasn't sure where he was going. And so she helped him figure out where he was going. And next thing you know, he was in law school. And next thing you know, he's practicing with me. So never underestimate the power of a magnificent woman, right? Yeah.
You can keep your eye on him there. If he's working with you, you can always be watching, right?
All the time. He's great. He was in the Marines. And so he came in with maturity and just a good guy, good, humble guy.
Yeah,
they've got 4 little girls.
I looked him up. I looked up on your website. I looked up you and him and saw your pictures and read a little bit about him. It's impressive.
Yeah, he really is that good. We just love him to death. Then I have a son named Zach. Zach's married, and he just finished law school. He decided not to come to work for Dad, but he's working for a big firm. I guess it pays more money. I don't know. He's doing well. And I've got a daughter named Haley. She's up in Utah. She's married to Vince Miller. We just love this guy. He graduated with a master's in accounting, but his love is the Army. His father was next in line to be the chaplain for the United States Army.
Wow.
And decided he didn't want to quite go that path. But Vince has followed his father in the military, and he finished Army Ranger training last year, and just now he's trying to be a Green Beret. So I don't know. Yeah, he's a fun kid. Plus, he likes to go fishing, and I like that. So I got a place to fish. Right? I have a son named Josh. Josh is married here in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. He's working in the construction industry and finishing his education at UNLV. And my last girl, or child, I should say, is Alexa. And Alexa just finished flight attendant school for Breeze Airlines, which is, I guess, a subsidiary of some sort to JetBlue.
Okay.
So maybe we'll get some free flights out of all this. Nice. I don't know.
Yeah, buddy passes.
Yeah, I like buddy passes and I like free.
So your wife, you said she's from Oregon. You met up at school. You met in college, right?
Yeah, she's amazing. She is from a little town called named Woodburn, Oregon. Her father's a veterinarian. I thought I might be marrying into money. I come to find out he's a farm vet. And I came to further find out if it costs more than the price of the cow, they usually just shoot the cow. But she's the oldest of 6 kids. She's just great. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about your career. You have a law practice here. You do like construction stuff. That's a majority of what you're doing.
It is.
And then your son-in-law.
Yeah, Drew Starbuck. Yeah.
Then your son-in-law, Drew, he does some other things, real estate and different types of practice there. So you started that 3 years after you graduated. That's pretty quick. I mean, I don't know much about the practice of law, but it seems like 3 years after, that's fast to be doing your own thing.
It was probably too quick, but I had worked 3 different jobs in 3 years out of law school. Now I never got fired, but I always just felt like I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. So I came home one day kind of in a somber mood, and my wife was 5 months pregnant with our 5th child. And I said, honey, I just don't know what it is. And she said, well, start your own practice. I said, I don't have any clients. I said, maybe one or two. She said, it'll work out. I said, but you're 5 months pregnant. We don't have health insurance. It'll work out. So the first call I made was to the baby doctor. I'll never forget the call. Do you accept a payment plan? He said, we'll work it out. So I went to the bank, and in those days, I'll never forget the guy. I believe his name was Larry Woodrum, and he was at Bank West of Nevada. And somebody said, you got to go see Larry. He'll loan you money. So I walk in and I sit down with this guy, and I'm sure my head was hung down low. I said, can I borrow $50,000 to start a law practice? 15 minutes later, I had $50,000 in an account.
Wow.
And well, magnificent part of as I look back of the story is that 2 years later, I called him. I said, Larry, can you take your $50,000 back? I never had to use it, and I'm tired of paying interest on it.
Wow.
So, I don't think people get loans that easy anymore in Las Vegas, but that's how it worked out. And
it seems like your wife had all the faith in the beginning. She kind of pushed you toward it and said, don't you worry, like it'll work out. And you had the courage to make a big leap. That's impressive. Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of young men who wanted to start their own practice and have asked me over the years, how do you do it? And I would ask them a question. How much do you give to charity every month? And if the response was very little, then I would say you're not ready yet. Now, the reason I said that is because when I was going to start my own practice, I was actually racing motorcycles again, and I was out at the track one night, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he asked me a question. He said, how much do you give to charity every month? And I said, I don't know, $40 or $50. And he told me, you're not ready to start your own practice.
Wow.
And I said, well, how much do you give? And he told me. I said, well, that's my house payment. He said, yeah. He said, when you learn that concept, you'll be fine. And so what we did is I actually went home that night, and I was kind of mad at my friend. Thought he was being a little judgmental. But we went home that night, and I talked to my wife about it. I said, honey, I think there's something to what he's saying. If we're going to start this, we got to give more. And she said, okay. So we did. We immediately started to give more. And, the phone has always rang. So that was 1997, and now we're in 2022. And even through the recession, the phone rang. And so every young person that I have given that counsel to, whether it be in the practice of law or other business, their phone has rang.
Wow. What is the principle there? Just that you have the kind of maturity, you have the kind of, selfless maturity or something. How does that work? What is the math on that?
I don't think it's earthly math, right? Mm-hmm. My parents, when I decided to join the LDS church and then serve a mission, they were okay with me joining the LDS church. But when I decided to serve a mission, that didn't go over as well originally as what I thought it might. But they knew I was dedicated because I worked and I saved about $12,000 or $13,000, and this was back in 1984, 1985. So it was a lot of hard work and a lot of savings. When I came home from that mission, my money was still in my bank account. I had no idea that they had paid for it.
Wow.
And I asked my parents, what did you do? Why? They said, well, we just decided to pay for it, but now we're going to give money every month to a charity because we recognize our business had never done so well.
Huh.
So that, those little things stick in your mind,
wow.
Right? Yeah.
That's great modeling from your parents who didn't necessarily share the same faith, but respected what you did. And even though they started to show you originally showed them, you taught them something that they reinforced. You've carried that and spread that same message to young professionals out there. That's what I'm talking about. That's why you're here right now. That kind of thing, man. I got goosebumps thinking about this.
Yeah, it was pretty powerful. Another thing I did is as soon as I made just a little bit of money is I put $1,000 cash in my pocket. And that $1,000 cash has been there now since 1997. So please don't mug me. If a black Corvette,
the guy's got money in his pocket.
But the concept, again, I was a little kid and this guy walked into our house on 560 East St. Louis in downtown Las Vegas. His name was John Van Hoove. He was a friend of my father's. And he pulled out this wad of cash. Well, as a little kid in a lower to middle class income, I'm looking at that thinking, I don't know what he does, but I'm in, right? I said, John, why do you carry that money? He said, so I can say no to people if I need to. Now that stuck with me too. So as a young lawyer, if somebody walked into my office, and to this day, even if they've got money, if something doesn't feel right, I know I've got enough in my pocket to feed my family for a little while.
Wow.
And so that concept.
You've been carrying $1,000 cash in your pocket all this, your whole life since you were a younger man.
Since 1997.
Oh my, you have it right now. You have
right
that.
now.
Oh my. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. I mean, I could think there's a lot of reasons for that. Like, I don't know, in the world of alcohol, I'm in recovery from alcohol, and I would hear people say things like, that they wanted to just keep one beer in their refrigerator just to prove that they don't need it. It's there, but they don't need it. They're kind of flooding themselves with some exposure. And so you got money and you could spend it, you could blow it, but you're just hanging on to it. That's kind of cool. That's way cool.
Or I can spend it. And if I spend it, as soon as usually I have just a little bit more, but when I get, so there's a little fluff there. So if somebody needs something, I can buy it, right? Or get out of a tight situation, or however you want to say it.
Oh, that is.
But at the end of the day, there better be 1,000 so I can say no.
I'm gonna steal that trick. I got to tell my wife when I get home, babe, open up the safe for me. We got to get
1,000.
Just keep it on Venmo.
Venmo.
I don't know how to use Venmo, but my wife sure does. She knows how to talk to that Amazon guy too, because he sure comes around a lot. This guy.
I thought my wife for a while had something going with the UPS driver, like.
I hear you.
We didn't welcome Jimmy Durbin. I just he's been on the show before. You guys know him, but he is also another stellar guy. He just wanted to be here tonight. Drove up in a pretty special looking Harley Davidson. That was pretty sick, man. That was impressive. What are you driving out there?
It's a Harley Roadster. 2019. And in full disclosure and being transparent, it actually belongs to my middle son. So I can't take credit.
Oh, okay.
Mine's a 94 Heritage Softail.
Okay.
So more of a cruiser bike.
You told me you had to get somewhere quick, and so you...
yeah, I had to get here fast.
Keep it warm for you.
I think also, just to kind of give the audience a feeling, when I came in and met Butch, you could feel the love. I could feel the love. I'll speak for myself. Kind face, sharply dressed. And then when you read the intro, birthday's February 2nd, mine's the 3rd.
Oh, very well.
Went to UNLV as well, right? And so I've appreciated what you've said, because I think that's how men can help men, is these little nuggets, these things that this wisdom that you gained along your own path, and the things that stuck. And so I really appreciated you sharing those two things, because that's what I want to learn from you, right? Is how have you continued to keep your heart up front, right? Oftentimes we talk about having a soft front and a hard back. A concept from Brene Brown of being vulnerable as a man, being tender, authentic, transparent, and also having a hard back and being a protector and a leader and a guider and a mentor for these young men that you talked about, for these young lawyers that you talked about, for your family and your son-in-laws. And so what else would you say to your younger self as you've gained this wisdom now sitting as a 56-year-old man in this chair?
I went through something in 1995 that I haven't shared with a lot of people, but I was just out of law school. The starting salary was $36,000 a year. Wasn't necessarily horrible in 1995, but I had $65,000 worth of student debt.
Wow.
And I had 3 children, and my marriage fell apart. And so I ended up living with my parents. My wife's trying to decide, is he going to come home? I'm trying to decide what I'm doing, where I'm going. And I remember just laying up at my parents one night, staring at the ceiling, thinking to myself, I don't know where I'm going. I'm so discouraged, so down. And this old guy knocks on my door, and he happened to be my LDS Bishop. And he said, "May I speak with you for a few minutes?" I said, "Yeah." I couldn't say no. He was a nice guy. Even though I had anger in my soul, I just couldn't say no to him. And he came in and talked to him, and he said, "Butch, what are your plans?" I said, "I don't know. I guess I'll get divorced and figure out what to do from here." He said, "I guess that's a plan." He said, "How about the plan of going home and learning to love your wife and have her learn to love you?" And I said, I don't know how that's possible. But he left that evening, and it just stuck in my mind. So I went home. And this old bishop, about 6'6" tall, he would walk over to my house every night and he had 11 children on a school teacher's salary. So big time hero, right? He would walk to my house every night, and he would just walk the neighborhood with me every night. And he would talk to me from everything about physical intimacy with my wife and how I could improve that, to emotional intimacy, to dating, to communication, things that I guess I just never learned at home. And I guess why would I have learned them? My parents had a great relationship, but we didn't talk about these things. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I, we always talk about the first 5 years of our marriage being, we don't talk about that. And then we talk about from 1995 on. And it's just been the most magnificent marriage. It's really, it has been. But again, what I garnered from that was this concept of one-on-one time.
Wow.
He gave me his precious resource of time. And so I try to do the same. I'm not great at it, but if I see a need, I recognize just a simple text message, probably not enough.
He was kind of in this automatic role of mentorship or stewardship with you, and so did he push for that contact, or were you, asking him to, hey, come take a walk, or you said he just would show up? Yeah. That's cool. So I think every man needs a mentor. Every man needs a bigger tribe of, 6, 8, whatever number of people. But to have one person at a critical time in your life care for you, he's busy. He's got 11 kids at home, and he's leading the congregation, and he's got you that he's kind of singled out as someone that's worthy of his time, evening, this special time to come and walk and talk with you. That's one of the coolest images that have ever been, painted on this show to me is you walking with a man who's talking about all of the deep things, all of the things that maybe you wouldn't want to talk about with anyone else. He made it comfortable somehow. He made it comfortable to do that. What was it about him that made you feel like you could comfortably talk about those personal subjects?
Yeah, I think just his warmth. I just felt like I was walking with God in some respects, right? I knew that he was a confidant. I knew he had wisdom. Even as I was 28 years old, so still pretty young, right? But I could just see, just his love for me. And I then fast forward, 20 years, and they called me to be a bishop in the LDS church. Last thing I ever expected. But the concepts that he taught me, I was able to put into play as people would come to me with marital issues and other issues. And I thought, man, God, that was a really painful process in 1995. I got to know God better. I got to know my wife better. I got to know this bishop better. But then as I fast forward, I think to myself, man, God God could see these things play out. He could see in the future that if I listened to this guy, good things would probably happen in my life. And if I didn't, if I went off on my own and did my own thing, that I might pay a different price and have a harder time having a relationship with God, at least for a season. So it was a painful process, but it was wonderful.
Brad just put out an episode about reframing and his thoughts just from a very raw, beautiful, authentic place of the Alph Quorum and what that is and what type of man in his heart that is and how it should project in the world. So I appreciate, you relating that story. Because I oftentimes think, as you just indicated, we really don't talk about before 1995, 1996, right? We get this idea that, well, we've had this pain and it's healed, and so it's behind us. But in the end, as a result of that, we kind of create a silo. And those individual silos that happen to us as men, then we don't allow the healing process and the learning process and the grace that happens. And so would you mind just sharing like what the struggle was, like what had you get to that mental place, emotional place, spiritual place? Like, because I'm sure I can relate to it. I've been to that place. There might be someone listening who's there, right? I kind of believe that we've either gone through, we're going through, or we will yet go through that place that you were back. And so do you mind sharing that?
No, not at all. One of the things that he asked me to do was go to the church and listen to a talk from a guy named Jeffrey R. Holland that was coming to town. Well, I had so much anger and frustration in my life at that time. I think just being poor for so long, going through law school. I mean, when my wife and I were in law school, I had $1,000 a month scholarship, where rent was $550 a month. We paid our tithing, so now we're down to $900 a month, and we never went on welfare. Well, you live that way for a number of years of just, impoverished, if you will.
Barely making it.
Barely. I mean, and we always made it, by the grace of God, we always made it. But, there's frustrations, and I'm spending, 12 and 14 hours a day studying, and there's little kids at the house, and right. All those things are, they're just going to lead to a tough situation if one doesn't get it squared up. And I didn't have it squared up. I felt my job was to work and get through law school and make money as fast as I could. So I took that same attitude into the profession at first. And then I got humbled. Right? But anyways, Jeffrey R. Holland was coming to town, and this old guy, Roy Fott, says, just come with me. Just come with me. I said, I don't want to go. But again, I didn't want to say no to him, right? I just loved him. If you love somebody, you don't want to say no. So I remember sitting in the back of the building that night, and Jeffrey R. Holland stands up at the pulpit, and this is what he says. I'll never forget it. He says, if any of you are feeling dark tonight, like there's no light, and that you might never feel light again, I just want you to do one thing for me tonight. Well, as soon as he started down that path, you can imagine my right eye opened a little and my left eye opened too. And then his counsel was so simple, but I've used it many times in life. He said, just hold on. Just hold on. The light will return. And it did then, and it has numerous times since. So that's my encouragement to people. When you're in a dark spot, try to just hold on. You'll notice that God will put certain people in your life at that time. Even if they're uncomfortable to you a little bit, they might be those angels that...
especially if they're uncomfortable to you.
Especially if they're uncomfortable to you. Yes, especially if they are. So, yeah.
You said something earlier about what the guy said to you when he said, what is your plan? he said, what about the plan to go and learn to love your wife? And that's an interesting thought about learning to love, because I guess maybe when we're younger, we just think, you either love someone or you don't. But this is like, you have to learn how to love. What did that mean to you back then? And what were the kinds of things you needed to learn? Like, you obviously were interested in her, you married her, you have a family, she's to this day, a beautiful woman. I mean, you had to learn how to love. What does that mean?
That's a great question. And maybe a little more background would be helpful. So I met my wife when I was at BYU. We fell in love immediately. It was just instant infatuation. And so we got engaged 2 weeks later and married 3 months later. Now, it's public knowledge now, but it wasn't for years. But my wife had a child when she was in her senior year of high school. And this was and by the way, she told me about it immediately when we're starting to get serious. And of course, as a young guy, I'm like, oh, no problem. Well, she had given the child up for adoption. And back then adoptions were very private.
Right.
So I guess I always felt this little bit of maybe jealousy. Maybe she didn't love me as much as she loved their boyfriend, who she had the child with. So, just inadequacies on my part, right? Vulnerable is the right word. But I should add that for many, many years, until we were able to, by the grace of God, 3 years ago, we were able to make contact with this kid. And he's just wonderful. It's everything we ever dreamed of. That's maybe a story for another day. But anyways, so I just always felt like, kind of second fiddle, just, and I realized one thing this bishop did is he said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fly that guy down from Oregon, because he and Paula, your wife, they never had really a chance to separate. And by the way, there was nothing going on with Paula and her ex-boyfriend for all those years we were married. Nothing like that at all. But my bishop could tell that there was something holding me and Paula from progressing. And it was just a really out of the box thinking, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna fly down her ex-boyfriend so they can walk up and down the strip and say goodbye to each other, because they never got a chance to years ago because Paula's parents broke them up.
Wow.
Right? Risky move.
Yeah.
I'm like, the heck you are. And he did it.
No kidding.
And it was wonderful, because for some reason it released my heart. And I was able to say, yeah, she does love me and everything's okay. And this guy had gone on and married and has a wonderful family. And like I said, just a few years ago, by the grace of God and that app 24andMe, we were able to finally, after all these years, find this child. And man, just awesome.
Wow, that's super awesome.
So when Brad asked that question, the way I heard him ask that is, I choose who I love. And I heard that in your story. Yeah. And then I love my choice.
Right.
And so how else in your years of marriage with your sweetheart, and under what circumstances and situations have you had to learn to continue to love your choice?
Yeah, that's great. One thing my mom said to my wife and I often in our first number of years of marriage is, you're not dating. You got to keep dating. You got to get out of town a couple of days. I'll watch the kids. But again, in my stubborn self, I just need to work. I need to, right? Well, after 1995, I took that counsel. And so we began to date every Friday night. We don't miss. And now if I was on a camp out or something, we'd go out Saturday night. We then began to take a trip once a year or twice a year for a week away from the kids. But the most important thing, again, back to that old bishop, he said, every day do an act of kindness for her. Every day. And he said the same thing to her.
Every day?
Every day.
Every day.
He said, every day. So you know how many candy bars I've woken up to over the years? She still thinks my greatest joy in life is a Hershey's, not Hershey's, a C's sucker. It is the second greatest joy in life, but anyway. So I've had a lot of those. In the meantime, I've washed a lot of dishes and, just, hey, I'm going to the kitchen. I'm just, do you want water? Do you want anything? Common sense things, right? We love those we serve. We know the concept.
It's little things, yeah.
But if we're not serving someone, it's really difficult to love them.
I notice you've done that so much. I don't know if this is a good place to transition, but you've done a lot of service throughout your life. So you talked about the charity thing in the beginning, how sharing that with young attorneys, if you're not paying anything to charity, you may not be ready to start your own practice. That represents an attitude of giving and sacrifice. Talk about some of the other things you've done. You mentioned camping trip. Was that like scouting type stuff? Right. You've done some volunteer teaching. You've done the most recently, I think I've seen you do stuff at a homeless shelter maybe, or talk about some service opportunities that you've taken advantage of. Yeah, I'm pretty involved with the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. I didn't know anything about the Las Vegas Rescue Mission, and here I was serving as a bishop in the LDS church, and somebody called me one day and said, hey, we've got this 18-year-old boy here from Colorado. Can you meet with him? Yeah, I'll try to help. I meet with him, and I realize I don't know what to do with this boy. By the way, nice kid, moved in from Colorado, was not LDS. He just showed up to Vegas, wanted to start a new life. So I called my wife. That's always a good place to start. Honey, I got this kid in my office. I don't know what to do with him. I mean, what am I going to do? Give him a food order or something? I can't move him into our house because we've got daughters at home still. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, call Heather Gibbons. I said, oh, I know Heather Gibbons. So I called Heather, and Heather just is well connected in Las Vegas as far as just knowing where the charities are, knowing what resources are available. I said, Heather, can you come see me? She shot right over to my office. She said, okay, Butch, here's what you do. You take this boy to the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. They will put him up for a couple of weeks, no questions asked. They'll feed him, and during the day, he's got to leave the premises, go out, try to get a job, come back at night. I said, well, I don't know much about this place, but I like this a lot. So I started to learn about it. And, every night at 5:00, as you may know, they open their doors and they'll give anybody a meal, no question asked. I love that. But I tell you what I love more is that they want to help people with addiction. And somehow, some way, they hope that out of the 400 and 500 people that they feed one meal a day to, that a few may come forward and say, I don't want to fight the addiction anymore. And the first thing they ask for, unless something has changed, which I don't think it has, is they'll take you in for long-term addiction recovery, but you got to give them your phone. You got to get rid of your sources. And if you're not ready to give up the phone, you're not ready to get help yet. I just fell in love with the organization. So I began to contribute more resources and time to that organization. There's many more out there. Finding a charitable organization that you connect with shouldn't be too difficult for most of us. But why do you do it? I mean, why? You're busy. You got a law practice. You got 5 children, 10 grandchildren. You got, I'm guessing, season tickets to the Golden Knights? I do. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. That's part of you got a motorcycle Corvette. You got a hot wife. You got everything. What makes you want to go to the Las Vegas Rescue or whatever places to serve? What makes you do that? Yeah. I guess I've never thought about it that much. It's just, maybe it's innate, maybe it's natural, maybe it's because, how many people have just stepped out over the years and either lended me a hand or, I remember one time we were driving back from from Las Vegas to Sacramento. The year was 1993. So picture this. I got my wife, I've got 2 kids in the back, in this ragged out old Hyundai, and we're heading up the 95 to go through Reno on Memorial Day
to get back to Sacramento to go to law school. And I break down in the sweltering heat. This was before cell phones. I look at Paula and I said, what do we do now? Pray. Well, we'll pray. So we prayed. Right then this guy pulls up behind me. And he's an older fella. So I got out of the car and I met him. And he said, it looks like you got a problem. I said, I do. I blew the timing belt. He said, And I said, why did you stop? He said, I was in my home up in Yerington, Nevada, up the road a number of miles. And I looked at my wife and I said, hey, we need to go. We need to go right now. She's like, where are we going? He says, I don't know, but we're going somewhere. And anyways, to make a long story short, we piled my wife, myself, and those two kids into their car. You know, they could have just taken us to Reno and dumped us at a hotel for the evening, but they didn't do that. They took us all the way to Sacramento that night.
Wow.
And so, you know, when you have people over the years that reach out to you and just help a little bit, it's just not hard to give back, right? I feel like I owe my whole life trying some way to give back for all the blessings I have. I mean, I've just been blessed. I mean,
that's why you're here. When I say, you know, what makes you do it? You said, I didn't even think of it. I mean, you're sacrificing. I know that you're donating, you know, money, time, resources, everything, you know, volunteering over there. And I've also seen you try to recruit people. So we're friends on Facebook and I've seen this stuff. Hey, we need an extra server or two tonight, you know, like you're arranging these things and you're not only going there for yourself, but you're bringing some folks along with you, like that kind of leadership towards something so selfless. I mean, that's just the coolest kind of man.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I really like somebody will tell me, hey, listen, I'm having problems with my teenage kid. He or she's just, they're becoming obstinate or they're becoming secluded and they don't want to help anybody and they're back talking. I said, all right, I'll pick you up at 3:45, you and the kid. So I'll bring him and the kid to the shelter. And after a night at the shelter, that kid, those eyes are opened up a little bit about real life. So I think that's a nice way kind of to give back to, I guess. Not that I'm just trying to help a kid, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Some perspective. He gets to serve. He gets to contribute, but he also takes away something from that too. And,
absolutely.
And I'm sure you do too. I'm sure there's some
every time,
you know, gratitude and just and I can just picture you're sitting there, you know, with a prayer in your heart for these people. And, you know, you're trying to extend love and positive energy while you're there.
Yeah. Can you imagine just one person out of the 500 saying, tonight, I'm going to start over. And all of a sudden they go through the program over there and then they go get educated or get into a profession. And 10 years down the road, they're taking people to the rescue mission to get help, right? That's the payback, right?
Yeah. Pay it forward.
Yeah. You get paid forward. Yeah.
So how did you learn to be a man? You've got all these great qualities. I really think that there are some men out there and you guys see them, you who are listening, you know what I'm talking about. You just see people and every aspect of their life just seems seriously good. No one's perfect, but you can just tell that they are bringing a lot to the table. And I think you do that, Butch. Who taught you how to be a man?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm still learning. That's why they always have me work with the youth because I'm still a kid. My wife tells me I'm a kid. I don't really understand it. She said she raised 7 kids, but I'm only counting 6. So I don't know. You know, I really do still feel like I'm learning. I do. I mean, I was listening to I like Joel Osteen.
Oh,
Some people don't, you know. But
I like him a lot.
I like him, man. Yeah. You know, he's positive and I was just listening to one of his talks the other day about learning. It's like, don't ever get too old to learn. So he went on for 35 minutes about things we can do to learn, you know. He said that every year, most people spend 300 hours in an automobile. He said, do you realize in 300 hours how much you can learn if you listen to a talk or listen to something to make you
audio book or something?
If you're into sales, how to become a better salesperson. If you're a lawyer, how to be right. You can go on and on. You know, if you're working in a church as a pastor, whatever. But the concept was don't ever quit learning. And so I think I'm still working on this being a man thing. I still like a little bit of risk. I joke a lot. Sometimes I go over well. Sometimes I don't. But I think it started out with my dad. You know, my dad, he's big time hero to me. He was raised here in Las Vegas I guess he was born in 1937. So there were 4,000 or 5,000 people in Las Vegas then. And he comes from a pretty troubled background. He was in and out of facilities, and he fell in love with my mom when he was about 14 or 15 years old. But my mom came from a good background, and my grandpa had enough of my dad. So my grandpa had the sheriff take my dad on the edge of Las Vegas and say, don't come back. So my dad ends up working in orange farms in Visalia, California. And then he went to San Francisco. In the meantime, my mom had been married, had a child, and my dad got word that she was going through a divorce. So he hauled back to Vegas, and he saw her at one of these like little Happy Days diners in the 50s, right? Mm-hmm. And her nickname was Shorty. He said, Shorty, you know, we've been apart a long time. Don't you think we should just get married now? And she said, yes. And he became a man. He became a man. And I never saw my parents fight. They never made much money, but they always worked together. They did everything together. They were just buddies. And you know, some of his techniques were kind of fun. Like he told us one time, us boys, I don't think I'm going to ask you again to make your beds. He never got angry. Well, we didn't make our bed. The next day, our beds were on top of the roof. There was all kinds of things on top of that roof on 560 St. Louis. Bicycle parts, shoes that didn't get put away, a bed. So, it's on the roof. But he never got angry. Anger was not in his makeup, so he would discipline, but never with anger. Oh my gosh, that sounds like Christ to me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to teach you a better way, but I'm not going to get angry about it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
No. I'll have the HOA getting after me. Like, what is all that stuff on your roof, Brad?
Well, they got tile roofs now, and so I'm not sure how that would go. We had rocks on our roof. Remember
what
that?
makes you think it won't be your stuff on the roof?
Yeah, it might be my stuff.
I'd be careful with that
That's
one.
right.
It might be.
So your dad was a great example of that. You said he became a man.
He did.
That's a process. That's it's not just, we don't age into it. Something has to happen to us, I think. I mean, so what else did you see from him or other men in your life that demonstrated how you become a man?
Yeah, I think a lot of hard work. And that was one thing, is that he had a tremendous work ethic, and you know, that concept of like attract like, right? Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful eternal concept. Usually you're going to attract people that are like you in some ways. Mm-hmm. Otherwise you just bounce off each other, right? And so I got to watch his friends too, and all of them were just young, trying different businesses, you know, staying out of trouble. My mom and dad both knew they were alcoholics. And one day my dad missed work. So he was very functional. But one day he missed work and he never drank again. That was it. And I thought to myself, here's a guy that comes from nothing, that has every excuse in the world because he was abused as a kid, all these things, to not be a man. And he decided he's going to be a man. He's going to be a good husband and a good father. And he's going to work hard and be loyal. And he was all of those things. He never had to say it. I watched it. Right? You know, when we'd go work at the track as a 9-year-old and an 8-year-old kid on a Saturday morning, pulling you out of bed at 4 a.m. to get in the back of the truck to ride, to go under the Charleston underpass and onto the I-15 out to Craig Road in the back of the truck when it's cold in the winter and hot in the summer. He didn't have to say anything. It's just, we're going to work. Let's go. Right? So I'm just blessed to have people like that in my life all the way through. My first boss coming out of law school, a guy named Norm Kirschman, wonderful, wonderful man. Fought in World War II. He was a boxer. He was so ethical. And I remember asking him one day, hey, how many billable hours do you want from me? Right, lawyers, billable hours. Well, he was a little bit cross-eyed and he was cantankerous. And so he's kind of looking at me, but he's looking over there. You know, we've had these conversations before, right? I was scared of him. He says, don't you ever talk to me about billable hours one day in my life. You give me your hours every week. And then I'm going to give the client the fair hours. Clients are not paying for your education. So you go in and you work and you learn to do the product right and correctly. And don't you worry about billable hours. Yes, sir. Well, again, that concept sunk in. And so when I hired my son-in-law and we had the same conversation, hey, Butch, how many billable hours a week? Because that's what the law firms are telling
everybody
Bill,
operates on
Bill.
that. Yeah.
I said, don't you ever talk to me about those billable hours. You give your hours to me. And then I would look at the hours. Why did it take so many hours to do that project? I'm dying over here. But after a few years, they get efficient and then they can keep their billable hours and it doesn't matter, right? But what a pure concept.
Yes, that's awesome.
Ethical, right? Yeah. So
it's nice to see that those things weren't lost on you, that you have paid it forward, that it allows you to be the man that you are and have the heart that you have and be transparent and share this vulnerable story about the struggle you had in 95 with your wife, and that all those things added up. So thank you, for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. But like I said, you asked a question, well, becoming a man, and I answered it. I was kind of serious that I'm still becoming a man. So I got COVID in December of 2020, and it wasn't the nice version. About day 12, I said, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this or not. I never went to the hospital, but my oxygen kept getting closer to that 90, right? That 90 mark. And I was so miserable. Anyways, I did overcome it. And by the grace of God, I guess I got to stay on earth for a while longer. But a couple months after that, I began to have what you professionals refer to, and I didn't know what they were then, ruminating thoughts.
Rumination. Yeah.
You're going to lose everything. You everything you've worked for, you're going to lose. You're going to lose it. And they would not. All of a sudden, I was up all night, sweating, heart palpitations. My wife has suffered from some anxiety and depression her whole life. And one day I woke up. Again, this was only a year ago now, and everything was dark. For the first time in my life, I've always been an optimist. Other than the 1995 heartache, I've just been this optimist. Hey, everything is going to be okay for everybody else, including myself. And then it hit me, depression and anxiety.
Wow.
And so we got me into counseling, and because she said, okay, that's it. We're done messing with it. Again, power of a good woman. We're done with this. You're going to be okay, but you got to listen to me. I'll listen to you, honey, because right now I feel so low. And she said, okay. So she got me into counseling, and that was helping. But it wasn't enough. And so finally she got me into a psychiatrist, and they put me on Lexapro, and it took about 2 weeks. And all of a sudden things started to clear up. And I was like, okay, my gosh, I feel okay again. I was just so grateful. So I've been open about it. I have not.
That is great.
I'm just telling people you can turn this around. Sometimes we can't, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes.
Well, but so that's good to know, because I didn't know that. But I think I might have known that you had COVID, but you were just been the epitome of energy. You've been one of those guys. I mean, you're a runner, right? You're still running?
I am still running.
You're a runner. You've done like marathons and right. You've done all that. You're like a real runner. I'm serious. Like,
unlike me and you.
If I run, I've got to go to the bathroom.
If somebody's chasing me.
Yes. So health and energy and that kind of thing. But to talk about kind of crashing after this COVID thing, having some thoughts that maybe seem to be out of control, get help, listen to your wife, start counseling and medication. Yeah. That's why you're here.
Well, she told me, she said, Butch, you never do medication without counseling, ever. Well, how would I have known something like that other than that she had been down the path? I'm like, okay, I'm listening to you. I'm all ears.
Was there any hesitation, or, I mean, it was just that bad that you would do anything?
So bad.
But what about a year ago? What about in the past? Would you have been a type to, I mean, it's clearly that you're pretty humble, but you also you got a smart aleck in there. You have a rowdy sense about you too, so like, would you always have been okay with that? Or is there some old school part of you that's like, I don't need that you had to fight through?
Not at all. And I don't say that but with any false sense of humility, but it was so miserable. I always thought I understood kind of what depression was or anxiety was, because I've read about it, lived with it, saw other family members with it, but I didn't understand it until it hit. And I wouldn't wish it upon anybody except for the lessons learned. Blessings come from it. And one of the blessings is through counseling, I learned, how to meditate more, how to get myself more in the present. I mean, I just remember going to dinner and looking at my cell phone 25 times thinking there's an important email that's going to come or an important text message. And now I go to dinner and I put my phone to the side and I look at my wife's hair. Or I can stay totally in this conversation now without thinking of anything else but being sitting right here with two wonderful men in the city of Henderson, Nevada, with lights on and air conditioning blowing, counting my blessings. And I could never do that before. Even though I've always felt like I was kind of a humble guy, I could never stay completely present. And so I remember talking to the counselor a while back. He said, "What do you worry about?" I said, "I don't ever want to feel like I felt a year ago." And good counselor, just like yourself, Brad, he said, "But would you be open to it?" I said, "I guess I would be, because right now I'm going to live in the moment. I'm going to live right now. I'm going to consider the lilies of the field. I'm not going to take a purse or script with me anymore. Yes, I'll save for the future. Yes, I'll still plan for the things that I can control. But I'm going to live today."
That's another one of those things that I've just been so impressed with as I've kind of just watched you from a distance here the last few years. I mean, I'll see things like, you're dancing at the hockey games like a fool. And when I say like a fool, I mean, there's nothing foolish about that. That's a man who's alive. You're not afraid of what you look like. You don't have much rhythm. Well, you kind of dance pretty good.
No rhythm.
But that's not the point. You're feeling the music. You're feeling the environment. Or there'll be these, like, I forget what you call them, but these little, like, donuts with the granddaughter's day or whatever. And
that's every Friday.
Every Friday. Okay. Right, so you got some little rituals where what? The grandkids come over for morning, or what happens?
No. I get up, I get my exercise in, I hit the donut shop, and then I show up at their house.
You go to their house.
I go to their house.
Like, here's donuts,
the donuts or bagels.
Happy Friday.
Here we go. That's right. Yes. And then we actually send donuts to the ones that live in California because we can't be there, right, all the time.
Have them delivered there.
So we have them delivered there.
That is so awesome.
It's a pretty cheap way to say, hey, Grandpa's and Grandma's thinking about you, right?
Oh, my goodness.
So, we have a good time. And, I think ever since I was young, I think it was my dad too, probably, but trying to make somebody smile, right? I mean, it matters. Maybe that's the only time they're going to smile the whole day. Maybe for a week, it's the only little bit of joy they've had. You just never know what is going on in somebody else's life. And so I think that's kind of an innate gift. I really do. Right. I mean, sometimes it's not a gift at all. Sometimes it goes too far and I got to answer to the boss, if you know what I mean. And I'm not talking to God. I'm talking to the other boss, my eternal boss. So sometimes I go too far and I got to back it off a little bit, but it's okay. She's
learned
been patient.
She's had to learn how to love you too, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That part of you.
Right. Yeah.
Brad and I often talk about, today I call myself Jimmy. But for 42 years prior to that, it was Jim. And then when I got into recovery, realizing the individual, the part of me that crosses the line, that pushes it too far, is my ego. is my pride. And it's being driven because of maybe that I'm feeling, or I'm feeling insignificant, or that I don't matter, or I did something wrong, or I'm not in control. And so my ego's trying to make up. Jim's trying to drive the car, so to speak. And I'm just curious as to what you've noticed, because I think that's the other thing about being a man, is being able to talk about our weaknesses, about being able to kind of own that piece of it, so that we can then apologize, like you said, and course correct, right? In that part of awareness and being mindfulness. And so how does that show up in your life? How does that manifest when that ego, when that pride kind of kicks in? And what's your process for being aware of that and then course correcting?
Yeah. In my business, right? A lawyer, there's just so much of that. And I'm guilty of it as the next person. But I think the man upstairs has been kind to me in that I usually know when I go too far. I remember years ago, I had a case with this guy, and it was just getting more and more contentious. And finally, I said something I shouldn't have said. So he turned me into the Nevada State Bar, wrote a letter on me, said, Mr. Williams told me to go F myself. So I get a call from bar counsel. Is this Butch Williams? Yes, sir. Now, when bar counsel calls you, you're shaking, right? Did you tell that other lawyer to go F himself? Yes, I did. Can you not do that anymore? No, I won't. I've never done it again. But things have heated up over the years. Another situation that I had with a lawyer that I just love and respect, but it just, our clients were going at it so heavy. And so we start to sometimes take upon ourselves the personality of our clients, and it just went too far. And so I just thought about it after a contentious conversation, shut my door, got on my knees in my office, prayed to God that, hey, listen, we're only fighting about money here or something, right? In the big scheme of things. And the impression was, send him a cookie basket to his firm right now. So I asked Robin, my assistant, would you just send a cookie basket over there? And that healed it. Just like that, one cookie basket, and we were healed and we were fine. We've had probably 40 cases with our respective firms over the years, and they've all resolved, in a friendly fashion. So I think it's just, like you said, all of us have egos, and they're going to come through sometimes. And if we just have certain rituals in our lives and things, we can keep some humility, right? It's not always going to happen, but we know when it's gone too far. We know when the red flag comes up, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that word ritual. Finding a series of actions that I can take every day, regardless of how I feel. And to me, that plugs into why you do the service and why you pay it forward and why you talk to these young men. It's just having this ritual to keep the ego in check.
Yeah. And everybody has their own way. I mean, I get up every morning and I'll read scriptures for 20, 30 minutes, and then I'll exercise, and then I'll get going for the day. And if someone says, well, you have to be up at 4:30 tomorrow, well, then I guess I'm getting up at 3:00 because I'm concerned about ever changing that thing, if you will, for lack of a better word, that I feel has carried me in life. Academically, I really struggled in high school. I graduated the old Las Vegas High School with a 2.2 GPA. So I never thought this guy was going to college, right? I just couldn't sit in a room and focus on academic things very well. And then I went on that mission. Well, when I was on that mission, they had this little prize you would get if you memorized 100 scriptures. Well, I really had to work hard at that. But I did. It took me 6 months or something, but I memorized every one of them. Well, again, you're in your younger years, right? And you're thinking, maybe I could go to college. Well, when I came home, by the grace of God, UNLV would let anybody in, even me. It was a long time ago. It's not that way anymore, I'm sure. But they let me in.
You've been a fan for life ever since.
Yeah, you bet I am. So I signed up for college. Again, never thought none of my family members had ever gone to college. But all of a sudden I said, hey, listen, it's taking you 3 and 4 times to understand complicated concepts when the guy next to you gets it the first time. I recognized that very early in my life. So I said, you better learn persistence. So I made my mind up very early. You might beat me. You might beat me in a courtroom. You might beat me in a debate. But I'm going to work harder because I know I have to work 2 or 3 times harder than you to be able to stay with you in this arena. And so I think, again, by the gift of God, you learn your weaknesses if you ask them and if you spend some time at them, and then you just work through them. Just, if natural brains is not your thing, well, then persistence better be.
Man, that's so great. You're just the openness to like, okay, I may have this deficiency in some area, but I still want and deserve and believe that I can reach these other accomplishments. I'm just gonna have to work harder. I mean, that is one of those traits. That's some of the, traditional masculinity that seems to be missing today is just, oh, okay. Well, I guess it means I need to work hard. I guess I need to push harder and I can do this. I just have to, it's going to require more from me. And I love that you're saying this right now, that like, okay, I, didn't even do well in high school. Now you're an attorney. Now you're balling out because of hard work and persistence and that discipline. So you're talking about a little bit of a morning ritual. You talked about reading scripture, exercise. Is that running pretty much mostly? Or
I'll run 4 or 5 days a week and go to the gym and lift weights a couple of days a week. Just something to get the blood flow, right? It's getting harder as you get older, but I don't miss very often. Even this morning before church, I walked 6 miles. I just need to be out breathing air and thinking and focusing. I'll usually listen to a talk or something positive or listen to good music, nothing too crazy I might be the only person in the gym that's listening to a spiritual thought or spiritual music because I'm trying to get my spirit tuned up before the world takes over at about 8 o'clock. Because the world's coming
right
every day. And so I'm just trying to tune up, right? And some people don't have to do that. Like my wife is a very simple faith. I wish I could be more like her. Like her faith and her hope is just so, she doesn't need an hour to do that every day. Well, guess what? I do. Or my ego will take over. So you just have to know where you are, right?
Yeah, great awareness.
Yeah.
I have a couple more questions for you, Butch. One is, what major error do you see men making? You've been around a lot of guys. You've been around a lot of people professionally, as a leader. You're talking about as a bishop. I know you've done some things with the young people in your church. You've had lots of opportunities to serve, and just you've been a community man. I mean, you've been all around the place. What do you see guys messing up on? If our average listener is a 40-year-old father, let's say, younger father, maybe has a couple kids, working, fairly functional, but what kinds of things do you think average guys are missing out on or not doing well, not paying enough attention to, mistakes they're making? See any patterns?
I think one is just trying to learn to listen. It was brings me back to the bishop days. A couple would come in and be at each other's throats. It's his fault. It's her fault. It's his fault. It's her fault. And at first I thought I had answers. I thought, well, this is a real easy fix. Maybe you guys should do this. Maybe you should do that. That didn't seem to work very well. And then it hit me one day. Just let him have it out a little bit. Just listen. Just slow down and listen. And once I did that, they would go boom, boom, boom. And then they would look at me like I was a miracle worker. Hey, that was great. I'm like, high five. I didn't say anything. I just listened. So, it's the best thing in life. Well, that's an exaggeration. But one of the wonderful things in life is maybe you are the smartest person in the room, but nobody has to know about it. When you walk into a room and you're humble and you're listening, then people want to talk to you. Then you know what the issues are. whether it be your wife or your child, or somebody you're trying to mentor. You don't know the issues if you begin to talk too quick. You just got to listen. And guess what listening takes? Time. So to me, I know it sounds so simple, but it's not simple. But if we, and I'm still working on this, trust me, if we'll work on the concept of listening, we're probably going to go pretty far in life. So,
what keeps guys from listening? Why don't they? You're saying it takes some time to do that and maybe patience, but what else? What other obstacles do men have that keep them? Why don't we listen very well?
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, of course.
Just jump in, yeah.
Feedback I got quite a bit in my late 20s and 30s. Jimmy, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Because it was always about me. I always wanted to impress you. I was coming from a place of, negative beliefs about myself or whatever the situation was, or I had to prove myself. And so I had to be the smart, whatever that was. And so I wasn't listening. I was talking about me. And I just kept hearing this feedback from different people in my life at different times of like, just shut up and lead with your heart. And I think when I first walked into the same space with you, that's what hit me was, here's a guy who I can see his heart. I can see the love in your eyes. It radiates in your face, this countenance, the glow, despite the fact that you're bald. Right?
I just shaved it. Glow there too. I just shaved it. I had like 5 hairs left at the front and I nicked it all off. And my wife's like, where'd your hair go? I said, honey, somebody took a picture of my bald head 2 weeks ago and showed it to me. So I just finished the job. Yep. I think it's staying that way now, but I don't know.
It looks good. It looks good.
I kind of like it myself.
Yeah, it's not bad. But no, I know it takes time. It's a skill. I'm still working on it. Sometimes but you answered your own question. You might not have known that you did because we're moving along, but you said 2 things: time and patience. To be a listener, it's going to take some time. Time's only measured to men, so we have a limited amount of it. So that leads into the next thing. A 40-year-old guy with 3 kids at home, he don't have a lot of time in his mind. He's like, I got to go here. I got this. I got that. And patience. And most of us are not born with that one, right? So we have to learn it over time. So time and patience.
I think too that if you believe that there's something valuable coming from the other person, I mean, to listen also requires that you respect who's talking and you respect who's out there. Even if it's your children, they'll tell you important things if you just listen. I remember listening to an audio book or some influencer of some kind, and he said, he was talking about like your wife complaining at you or something. And he said, you want that data. That's information you want. Don't shut yourself down. Hear it. And then you can do something, and then you can minimize it by taking action and listen. But you have to listen first.
And I think what comes with that time and patience, at least for me, was the realization that no matter who was in front of me, there is value. They have something to offer. But because of my ego and my pride and my judgment, you don't have anything to offer. And that is the ego. That is my pride of believing that and instilling that. And so I don't have to listen.
That is so good. Before I came here, I was at a different meeting and this church leader stood up and he said, I want to show you this picture. And it's a picture of Christ and he's getting ready to heal someone, but you can't see the person he's healing. He goes, do you notice that, kids? And he's talking to a group of kids, even this 56-year-old kid. And I'm like, wonder where he's going with this. He says, Christ can't see the person. When you go serve someone, you never want to think that they are less than you or anyone else. In other words, you want to be on the same plane. Everybody's got a story, and it's usually a pretty good story. And when you take time to listen to anyone, you're going to probably get some nuggets that are going to bless your life. I mean, I'm sitting there listening to you guys today, and I'm just thinking, man, I'm just learning from these guys. They think no, I'm learning. I'm sitting here learning from these guys, you know?
Which is why men need men.
That's
right.
right.
Why men need men.
That's right. That is exactly why. So tell me something that you're still trying to figure out about life. You know, you're saying you're 56, you're still growing, you're still learning to be a man, but literally something that you want to still maybe begin or still round off in your life.
You know, I saw that question kind of as a precursor. What am I still trying to learn? So this is going to sound a little generic, but I do mean it. I'm still trying to learn more about the nature of God. I'm still trying to understand how, you know, his compassion can be there for even a guy like me raised in downtown Las Vegas. I'm still trying to get better at my profession. I mean, I've thought about this concept of retiring and, you know, these types of things, and it just doesn't feel right. It just feels like I can still learn and maybe be of some benefit to my clients if they want me to do something that maybe I can help them with it, you know? So I think it's just this concept of ever learning whatever's around us. I don't know what tomorrow brings. So we'll see.
So what is the most alpha attribute about you? And I just did a podcast before this one that I'm kind of trying to define that, because I hate the way the world looks at the, you know, alpha male. That's such an ugly caricature, but alpha being the highest part of you, you know, the best, purest, most, you know, the strongest, brightest piece inside you. What is that for you? Something that you can really be proud of and own as a talent or gift. What's special about you? What is your superpower?
I don't know. I saw that question too, and I wanted to punt that thing down the field, you know. But then when I punted it, I felt like our punter in high school. One time he punted it, and it went right off his foot into the stands to the right. But I'd never seen a 180-degree punt before. But we saw it. I'm not going to mention his name, Jim Capper, but if you're out there, that was the best punt I ever saw in my life. This is really a tough one, right? Because it makes you talk about maybe a quality you have figured out about yourself over the years that maybe you could pass on, right? I mean, really, isn't that kind of the core of the question? Yes. I would say just keep working at it. Whatever you're doing, just keep working at it. You know, if you're in a tough spot right now, tomorrow's probably going to get brighter. And if it's not tomorrow, it's going to be the next day, if you keep working at it, right? I remember an old guy named F. Enzio Buscia gave a little talk one time, and the first reminder that he gave himself every day is, I am a child of God. I am a child of God. My mom used to say to me, hey, Butchie, you know, I don't like you sometimes, but I do love you. There's some days I don't like you, but I love you. And so I look at God that way, you know. There's some days he's not going to like the decisions I make because they're my decisions and they're prideful and they're, you know, but I know he loves me. And as I jump into scriptures every day or listen to a talk, or I'm reminded of that love. I see that love in the eyes of all those at the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. I remember walking to church one day as a bishop. This guy was walking right to, I would always walk to church because it was a 1 mile walk to my church from my house. And with having 6 kids at home, it gave me a chance just to clear my mind a little bit and go try to be a bishop, right? And this guy's walking at me, and he's a big guy. He's burly, and he's tatted from head to toe. And I've never felt like I was a real judgmental person, but I've judged, and I've judged wrongfully, you know? But that guy's walking at me, and all of a sudden, I went from his tattooed body into his eyes, and I could just see the light of Christ in this guy. And I said, that guy right there is your brother. And things changed about how I viewed people from that day forward. I just, you know, nobody's less than you. Nobody's better than you. If you're going to compare yourself with someone, if you really find it necessary to compare yourself with someone, go ahead and compare yourself to God. You'll get yourself humbled because, he creates worlds without end. And you're sitting here just trying to make $10, keep a little money in your pocket to pay the bills next month, right?
Right.
So I think just keep working, right? Do the best you can, stay humble, and keep working. Things will work out. They do.
You just have so many stellar qualities, man. When someone asked me before what I thought it meant to be an alpha, and I read this book recently called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And to me, this book is about archetypes, and that we all possess these different archetypes. So that of king, now that would be like the good leader, a benevolent king. He's giving to his kingdom and whatever. He's king. That's the leadership area. And then warrior is the guy who's fighting for the good, fighting for the right thing. That's your profession. Maybe you're a warrior that way. You're a warrior with talking about the Las Vegas rescue mission, helping in good causes. You've been involved with a lot of those things. Magician means you have specialized knowledge. Not only that you have specialized knowledge, but that you share it. So unlike a street magician, this kind of magician is someone who would teach their tricks. And you're doing that with your son-in-law who's in your practice and all the young attorneys that you've been able to influence. And then lover. Lover is the guy that's showing up with donuts at the grandkids every Friday, or, dancing in the stands at the Golden Knights hockey games. You're just a grateful person. I've just seen some amazing things from you, and I really appreciate you being here to join with this, man. And I hope that we can, I don't know, continue our friendship. I guess we haven't been super close, but I've known you for probably 15 years. And a guy came to me one time to work with me, and you were called as his leader. You were in that period. And he said, I believe that God knows who I am because this person was, he's my pastor, he's my bishop. And he is a person that I believe is going to help me in my life. And I remember hearing just how you to this guy was kind of like the man who influenced you way back, and that you treated him that way, maybe had him in your home and all these kinds of things. And it's just great to know that there are men like you around. You've got these great polarities. So on one hand, you're running every morning. You ride a Harley, you have a black Corvette, and yet, your biggest goal is to continue to learn to understand God. Like, you don't see those kinds of things in people, motocross rider back in the day, marathoner, Harley Davidson, Corvette driver, and highly spiritual, talking about tenderness, the love in people. That is the most brilliant, beautiful stuff that I've ever seen in guys. And you really represent that a lot. So thank you for who you are and for being willing to come and share with us a little bit here today. Jimmy, do you have any closing thoughts or questions or things for Butch here?
I appreciate, thank you for showing up in the world. Thank you for the difference that you make. I still think you punted that question. I think your superpower, you love. Yeah. You love. You found a way to fall in love with yourself, and it shows up. And so thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm never going to forget the term. It was worth driving out here for a lot of reasons. First, you see again, Brad. But second of all, I'm never going to forget that terminology, a hard back and a soft front. That's the new saying for this week. Just hard back. Sometimes your back's got to be hard. That world's coming at you, but you can keep your front soft. I love it.
Yeah, keep your heart open.
Oh, so good. So good.
I'm just soft everywhere. I'm soft in the I need to harden up a little bit like these two. These are muscle guys.
Tighten up a little myself, Brad.
Soft.
Yeah. What's that joke from the 80s? We used to tell each other you get Dunlap disease.
Yeah.
Remember that one? What's Dunlap disease? When your belly Dunlaps over your belt. I don't know where they get these things. The 80s were a great time to be alive.
Yes, they were. You guys, we just want to highlight some of the best men that we can get our hands on. And I think we've scored big time here tonight to have Butch Williams. I meant to ask you, why the name Butch?
I was wondering if you were going there.
That's alpha from day one when they start calling you Butch. You're a total stud when they do that.
So that is a story. When I was born, my mom wanted to name me Don because she had an Uncle Don that was just a trip. Talk about a humble guy. I remember him as a kid. He'd come into our home and he was so humble. Don Langley was his name. Well, I had another Uncle Don and he was a little rougher. So my mom wanted to name me after the more humble Don.
The good Don.
Yeah. And my dad said, well, I'll tell you how we're going to solve this problem. I'm just going to call him Butch. And that was it. I thought I had it shaken in high school. Nope. College? Nope. Law school? Nope. Got into the professional world. A few clients call me Don and it's still Butch. So I imagine that will be on my tombstone one day. I don't know. I might get cremated off the coast of Hawaii. I heard you can do that for $300. I figured, why not? I like the North Shore.
Would they throw you in a volcano or what do they do?
It's the Neptune Society. $300. They sizzle you and put you out on the ocean, man. That way when I'm resurrected, man, I'm in one cool area. So I've got that in my trust right now, but my wife says I have to change it.
Tell her the new thing now is composting. So you just want to be composting.
Turn you into a tree.
And then spread the dirt all over.
Oh, that's some Dutton stuff going on there.
Yeah, seriously.
It's great to be with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
No, thanks for coming in.
You guys, until next time, no excuses. Alpha.
Gentlemen, you are the Alpha, and this is the Alph Quorum.
There it is.